Let's Talk Loughborough, the podcast from Loughborough University that brings interesting interviews from staff and students and the latest news from across our campuses. I'm Soph, I'm the Internal Communications Officer at the university looking after student and staff comms, and today we're going to be talking with Chris Mcleod and Issie Bickerstaff, who are the chairs of the LGBT+ staff network and the LGBT+ association, to talk all things Pride. So hi both, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves and letting us know a little bit more about what you do, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm Issie, I go by they, them pronouns. I'm a final year industrial design student at the design school, and I'm also the LGBT+ officer at LSU. So I also chair the LGBT+ association as well. So my work is everything from kind of social stuff, support stuff, but also a bit of kind of activism, and yeah, making sure that the university is as inclusive and supportive as possible for LGBT people.
And I'm Chris Mcleod. I'm an academic in the School of Sport, Exercise and Health Sciences. My research looks to improve eating behaviour to reduce disease risk and improve public health. But I'm also the chair of the LGBT+ staff network at the university. And I pretty much take on a similar role to Issie, and just looking at the campus from an LGBT+ perspective, mostly trying to think about staff and staff needs. But we do align quite a lot with a lot of our work.
Amazing. Well, it's so great to have you both here. Very excited to talk all things Pride. We're going to start with an icebreaker question, which is, who inspires you from the LGBT+ community?
It's a good question. I like that one to start off with, because we all stand on the shoulders of giants, but we all work with people who are also very inspiring. So I was thinking about this, and I thought I'm going to bring it close to home, just because that's easy for me. And Issie, for example, is someone who inspires me greatly. The way that they take on their responsibilities as an LGBT+ leader from a younger person's perspective, really thinking about the way that we can work in different ways through activism to improve LGBT+ people's lives, I think is very, very inspiring. And I could never have hoped to do anything that they do at their age. So that's one person. And the other person was the chair of the LGBT+ staff network when I was the student LGBT+ officer at the Students' Union some years ago. And that was Phil Wilkinson Blake. And Phil sadly passed away 2.5 years ago. But I used to meet with Phil when he was the LGBT+ staff network chair, and I was as I said, the association chair. And the way that he went about his daily work with a smile, with bounce, was so infectious and very inspiring. And to think that he was doing LGBT+ activism over the last 40 years or so, when we had much more less accepting times, is incredibly inspiring to me. And I wouldn't be in this position without Phil's input, support, and the mold that he really created for this sort of a role. So they're my two off the cuff, or as I say, a bit closer to home.
Amazing. No, that's great. I think it's always nice to hear about people's kind of like personal connections. It doesn't have to just be someone who's a celebrity who can inspire you. It can be much closer to home. What about you, Issie?
No, that's a really sweet answer, and thank you for the high praise. But no, I was going to say really much the same thing. It's both kind of people out there in the community, and it's also people closer to home. Chris, my committee as well on the LGBT+ association. All of these people are just amazing. They work extremely hard to support others. And really, I couldn't be doing what I do without the people who laid the groundwork before me, including Chris, who had my role a few years ago. And like being around these people just inspires me to do my best as well. But there are kind of like activists I look up to as well. There's loads, but if I was just to list a few, I'd say someone kind of close to home is Mariam Din, who runs QTI POC Knots, which is a social support group in Nottingham for queer people of colour. And they're just absolutely amazing speaker and activist, and yeah, really inspires me. Also, Yasmin Benoit, who is an asexual activist who raises awareness particularly about what it's like to be a person of colour who's asexual. which is amazing because it's an identity, especially that intersectional one, which gets very little visibility. And also, Pigeon Pagonis is also one of my favorite activists. They campaign for bodily autonomy for intersex people. Yeah, it's really cool.
Amazing. Those all sound like very inspiring people. And actually, the person that I chose was also very close to home. I have a friend who she's a little bit older than me, and she provides a lot of kind of informal support for people who are not out to their parents yet. It's not anything she does kind of through a charity or anything. She's just always kind of offered a shoulder to cry on and an ear to listen to. And I think it's really lovely. She gives a lot of her time to other people. So I have chosen her. Her name is Amy, and she's wonderful as well. And I think that's something that we definitely have here at Loughborough, is there's such a community of people who are willing to help and to listen, which is really nice. I really like that there's a lot of kind of visible support there for people who might need it.
I completely agree with that I don't have the comparison directly of 10, 20, 30 years ago, but from what I've heard other people say, we have come quite a way on our campuses. Not that there's anything sort of purposefully, actively wrong previously, but there are those implicit sort of issues that come, and that the fact that we've moved on and are becoming a much more accepting place where these sorts of conversations, which some of them can be really difficult, and that's okay. It's the fact that we're allowed to have them and to precisely identify where we still have issues and look to resolve them. That is a fantastic place for us to be at now, I think, and there's still more things that we need to do, obviously, but I think it's so much better than it used to be.
Amazing. Well, and actually leading on from that, I guess we can start with our first question, which is, could you tell us a little bit more about what your networks do at the university?
Yeah, I mean, a bit of everything, really. We do have support, activism, fun, kind of educational stuff as well. We do a lot of events for everything from kind of panel discussions and our weekly coffee hangouts, right out to our night out, which is called Out, which happens every month. We also do social media stuff, make awareness posts, we have big group chats and things. And then we also work with people like Chris, senior members of staff as well, behind the scenes on things like trans inclusion in sport, or getting people's names right on the university systems. We're usually part, if the university or LSU were to respond to something that's happened in the community, we usually consult on that. So behind the scenes stuff, as well as some kind of more student facing work as well.
And from the staff perspective, really the staff network is a place for people to come who are LGBT plus, and for our allies as well, to come together, people who have either similar minds or similar experiences, to realise that they're not alone on our campuses, that there are other LGBT plus people, and through that we look to provide some support, safe, supportive forum in our monthly meetings and other in-person events, so that people can come together and feel part of a group and a community, whether that's to share their LGBT plus experiences, or just to come together with a group of people that they can sort of feel safe with. But we also then come together to try to make more systemic changes across our campuses. And that can be anything from the provision of toilet facilities to how data is stored at the university, all the way to looking to change, make either amendments to or additional policy or guidance documents based on our university statutes. So we can go all the way from just it being a coffee meetings to meetings with senior level management to make some real changes to the university structure. So it's quite a broad group with lots of different people from different job families, and it's I'm probably quite biased, but I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that we have such an array of people at the meetings and in our network who want all different sorts of things from the network, and it's just trying to work out how you balance that and with the fact that it's not our permanent jobs. So all good fun.
No, it's amazing. And I mean, to kind of already repeat myself, but it is genuinely so lovely to work somewhere and to see that there is a space for the LGBT community here that is so welcoming. It's very well known on the campus, and for both staff and for students, I think it's really lovely. And I love the work that both your networks do, and in my day job I get to work with you both a fair amount, and it's wonderful. It's always a joy to work with you both. So I think it's
also really lovely for kind of incoming students as well, maybe kind of sixth form age, to see that we're so visible and all the work that we do. I know certainly for me that was one of the reasons I chose Loughborough, and like going, I really need this university where I can be myself. And yeah, Loughborough's definitely been that. It's been a great kind of platform and playground really to like explore who I am. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
Definitely. And that's all part of the university experience, isn't it? It's your first time away from home. It's really your first chance to really learn more about yourself, discover who you are, and not have kind of the pressures from where you grew up or your family or anything like that. You really have a little bit more freedom there. So yeah, you're completely right. For people to be able to see it kind of coming in, that there is a space for them there. That's a very good point. Moving on to the next question. What is pride and why is it so important?
It's a big question. Well, I get Pride Month. I'll talk about myself, and maybe Issie can talk about Pride a bit more generally. But Pride Month is celebrated each year in the month of June, and really it's to honour the Stonewall Inn uprising in Manhattan in New York in 1969, which was it's sort of heralded as a landmark moment or watershed moment for LGBT plus liberation, when there was Stonewall was an LGBT bar, and as happened quite a bit back in that time, it had a police raid, and it was the first time where the LGBT community sort of fought back, and then afterwards met and decided that they were going to en masse protest and also say, we just want to live as ourselves and that we should not be having this sort of intrusion in our lives anymore. And so then the year after, so 1970, they had the first Pride March. And so and then every year has carried on from that, and it's changed into different things, but that's sort of where Pride started and where Pride Month started. And as I say, it's turned into various different things now. But I mean, Issie, do you maybe want to comment on anything else or anything I haven't said?
I'll try. I think you covered a lot. Also, it's quite cool, but it's 50 years since the first Pride March in the UK this year, which is awesome. I guess it's, as you said, it's about both the kind of protest origins of it, but also celebration as well. Obviously, we've come a long way since then, but there's a lot of places and a lot of people who don't experience that same freedom yet. So it's also a reminder of what we still have to do as a community to ensure that everybody is kind of free to be who they are. I suppose, an opportunity to educate people. It's a time where we're sort of the most visible. So in a lot of cases, that's a good opportunity to educate people. Sometimes if you're in a workplace, perhaps they'll have events to raise awareness. In our case, obviously, we have our kind of pride marches and things, which again, it's that blend of celebration, but also protest and understanding the work that we still have to do.
Yeah, and I just add further to that. I think one of the things that I think is so important is understanding the origins of Pride, and this story that I've said is sort of our modern day liberation origin point, because 50 years and 50 years for the UK since the first Pride March, that is within people's parents and grandparents' timelines, and maybe to people listening, your lifetime as well. That is so recent. It is absolutely, it's just a second on the clock of human experience and history. And so we've come a long way, but also to realize that this isn't just something that has always been the case, and this is how it has come to this place. And there are many different shapes and sizes that people can take in their activism journey. There is the protesting and that happens, and people feel more comfortable doing that. There's others that are the people that will sit at a table with those who have the power to make decisions, to make changes, and to talk similar languages, and to make a case. And you can use data if you want to try and support that. And I guess that's sort of where my role is. But there's so many different ways that people can be part of Pride, and that is okay. You can do it your way, as long as you just look to support inclusion of LGBT plus people. That is all we're looking for, really.
Yeah, and I think that's some important points about kind of how recent things are and how things across the world are different in different places. So, for example, I have kind of international friends that when they go back to their home countries, suddenly they don't have the same rights that they do here. And it's really just a reminder of that as a global community, there's still so much to do. And also, just as a little anecdote, during our History Month crafting identity workshops, I just had this amazing moment where I was just in there making some like badges or something. And there was another person in there also making badges who was older than me. And we got talking after a bit, and she said that she was part of the Section 28 protests, which to me, like, that's kind of before my lifetime, certainly before kind of I was involved in any LGBT stuff. So just to meet someone who's kind of a queer activist elder sort of figure, with that, just like they're here, they're still here, they're still doing this. It was really a reminder of how recent all of this was, really. So yeah, that was just amazing.
Absolutely, that does sound amazing. And I guess that's another aspect of it, is that you can all kind of come together during this month, during these events, and share experiences and hear from others. And yeah, I think that's amazing. And I guess on that note, what have the networks got planned for June?
Well, I thankfully delegate my Pride Month organising responsibilities and get a lot of support from colleagues across the campuses, whether that's on the LGBT Staff Network Committee or other staff in various different roles. So I'm not fully party to this information at the moment as of this current date of recording. There will be an announcement at our next Staff Network meeting, which will be what is going on. But I do know that we have our Pride March across the East Midlands campus, which does happen every year, and that will be in June. I don't know if there's been a set date. Izzy might be able to help me with that. No, that's fine. So that watch out for that. And it's for, we need to stress, unless it specifically says that it's for LGBT people specifically, it is for our allies as well. It is very much just thinking about LGBT rights and inclusion and celebration and all of those things for everyone. So yeah, everyone is welcome to come along.
Yeah, and that goes for pretty much all of our events as well, unless it specifically says otherwise, which it basically never does. Allies are always very much welcome. Anyone who's kind of open and wanting to be supportive and to learn, very, very welcome as well. I mean, Chris is right. We'll have our Pride March as usual, which is a really lovely thing to collaborate with the staff network on. For us, it's usually just before handover periods or just after. So it's also a really crucial time for the LGBT plus committee, really lovely one. I think this year we're hoping to expand it just a little bit more and kind of have a kind of banner making workshop type thing, really reflect on, as we've been talking about, the kind of protest side of things. So that should be really lovely. From the Student Association side, we're also hoping to hold one last one of our nights out and theming that around Pride. So that should be really nice. And then a few other just sort of June events that we're hoping to put on a bit more chill, kind of like a picnic, pub quiz, which usually goes well. So yeah, a few things coming up, we hope.
Amazing, that's great. And for those who are listening, all of this information will be on the internal university website and in your staff and student newsletters as well. So you'll be kept up to date as things get confirmed and announced. But yes, the Pride March is a particular highlight for me. I like to make sure I am definitely on campus during those days, because you usually get good weather as well, which is very important for a march. Not completely necessary, but it's always nice.
Yeah, we do try to organise that. We tend to put some favours in, but this will be the year that it won't happen. Let's see.
No, I've jinxed that now. My bad. So the next question is, why is LGBT plus representation so important? And you kind of touched on this, but maybe you can kind of expand a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the phrase that's like, you cannot be what you cannot see is kind of coming into play here. It's really true. It makes it so much easier to kind of openly be yourself when you see other people do it, that you know, and even just sometimes, especially with more minority identities, you just don't know it exists. You don't know it's an option until you meet someone else or hear of someone else. You're like, oh, that's it. That makes sense now. And you kind of feel like there's someone else who understands you. There's a community out there that understands you, which is huge. And I think the other side of things is it takes the burden off of individual LGBT plus people, for us to kind of constantly have to explain ourselves or sort of defend our existence sometimes. If there's representation out there on TV or kind of in books and things, that really helps both us find ourselves, but also for allies to learn about us as well. Which just makes it easier for everybody.
Well said. What else can I add? Well, this community, we really have a shared experiences or shared issues that really centre around gender, really, whether that's to do with identity or sexuality. And these tend to be minority or marginalised issues that need really some sort of collective energy behind them, or all powerful voices to go against the more majority issues of the day. And we've come really far, but I think LGBT plus representation still needs to continual oversight, even though we've said how far we have come in this time, because the movement towards progression will always come with some reticence. Now, whether that's somewhat fair reticence, because it's just to check that when we're moving forward, we're considering the effects of all changes that we do, so that we can move systems along, all working in tandem together. So it's a sort of, okay, you put that idea on the table, yes, we can do that. We just need to work through all the various bits and pieces to see how that has a ripple effect to the rest of whether it's our society, our legal systems, our medical, whatever it is. You can have something like that, which is kind of like I think a fair small c conservative response to change. But then you've always got to keep the eye on when that goes too far, when some sort of progress to make the experience of make more people's experiences freer every day. And that's what we want to include more and more people as we go, as best we possibly can. That can be used because of fear, because of hate, to just say, no, that's not happening. And then you actually regress on any progress that you've made. And this ebb and flow sort of does happen, and you come to expect it. And whether, whilst we wish that wouldn't be the case, that is the reality. And you've just got to keep an oversight on it, because a small bit of a pause button is very different to moving the other direction. And you need to get a view over a longer period of time to know, is this going backwards, or are we still going forwards? Because it can go backwards, and it can go backwards to a very dark place. And we just need to keep an eye on that, really, because we have, as I say, we have come so far. So that's why I think LGBT representation is still needed, because there is the reality that more majorative norms within our society could take the floor solely, and then maybe regress where we've come for LGBT people. So that's my view anyway.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I suppose on a lighter note in terms of kind of the way things sort of evolve over time, but there's also the community itself evolves over time, like the language we use, the different identities people, like different words people identify with change over time. So that's also something, kind of nuances of representation change over time as well.
Yeah, no, I think these are very important points, and I think our listeners will really benefit from knowing more. I know that I've already learned lots just from this one conversation, so I really appreciate that. And on kind of a similar vein, often with these episodes, we ask people if they have any recommendations or resources for people wanting to find out more. If you have any particularly good examples of where there is good representation in TV shows or whatever. So I wondered if you had any of those that you could share.
I will share a recommendation, I think. Whether you think you know the community or don't, or you know the arguments or not, or the history or not, I think come to an LGBT event of some sort and use your 2 ears at the ratio of 2 to 1 to your mouth over that period of time, and just listen and just ask maybe the questions about what these people experiences have been, the people that are in the room with you, and hear why it is important to them. I'm not saying that everything that everyone says you should need to then become the most ardent activist for, but to listen and about the current experiences, as Issie said, the sort of current language and terminologies, allows you to update yourself with what individuals that you have met feel and experience. If you can then read, watch things about the Stonewall riots or about LGBT plus history over the last 50 years and how it's progressed, through Section 28, the decriminalisation of homosexuality, all of the different landmarks that we've had, then you can place the current people's experiences within that historical context. And I think you can get a really helpful overview to understand this community, why it has such passion, why it has such an identity, why it's so important, and what shared issues that we have, and maybe what issues you share with these people as well, so that we can bring people together more than we can separate people and say that we're all completely different. Because I would think each person has their own history to which their everyday experiences are placed within a specific context. You have issues, we have issues, and we're trying to just resolve them. And it's just that we're a smaller group. So that's my recommendations for anyone listening.
That's such a lovely answer. I don't know how to top that, but I guess I'd agree with kind of learning from people, really sort of immerse yourself in it if you can. Like if you're going to go to Pride, don't just go to London Pride, try going to Brighton Trans Pride, try going to Black Pride. I think all of these events tend to be very kind of open to allies coming to sort of learn more, which, yeah, they're really lovely spaces for that. I think also similar to what Chris said, but just, following kind of LGBT community leaders and activists on social media can be a really good way to sort of passively learn, just see kind of what are the everyday experiences or kind of community happenings that they're talking about. In terms of maybe the more fun side of kind of watching TV or reading comics and all this sort of stuff, I mean, you really can find queer representation, I think, in most media forms now if you look for it. And I think there's stuff from where that's being centered to kind of shows like It's a Sin to where it's just something that's there. I think like, I don't know, the Owl House. But yeah, I really do think pretty much every medium, it's just a case of doing some Googling, you'll be able to find some representation. And I think this is back to representation a bit, but I think in all cases, the more of it that there is, then it kind of doesn't matter so much if some of it's got imperfections and things. So if you can just watch as much as you can within like things you're interested in, that's probably the best way to sort of passively learn and also enjoy yourself at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think I'm about to expose myself as a massive nerd here, but I absolutely love going to the library, and around kind of Pride Month, they will have a table. Well, in my local library, but I'm sure in most libraries now, they'll have a table that has kind of very LGBT plus focused books, whether that's just the story centers around 2 LGBT plus characters, or whether it's, a little bit more about the history of the movement. There's so much stuff that's kind of right there in front of you now that you can access really easily, and library cards are free. The books are free to borrow, which I think is the best thing ever invented because I'm a big book nerd. But I love doing that kind of every June. I really focus in on the books that I read that month, all having some kind of representation. And I've learned a lot from it. And like you said, you can take in a lot of stuff quite passively just through reading romance novels that are centered around LGBT plus characters, or the main character, that's kind of part of their whole story. There's so much that you can take in a little bit more passively without being like, right, I'm going to sit here and really educate myself. The passive intake is in some ways just as important, because it puts everything into a bit more context. And no, I think there's so much stuff out there now, which is really great to see. I really love that.
Yeah.
Hats off to you, so hats off to you for doing a specific reading list in June towards LGBT. That's strong. That's very good.
Thank you. And I've ruined it for myself because I bought 2 books by an author called, oh my God, what is her name? I can't remember her name right now, but I read both of her books like back to back last month because I couldn't wait. So now that was my June reading list. I need to find some more, but I'll head to the library. It's all good.
I think it's really cool if you can try and consume media that's got LGBT plus representation that's from cultures aside from your own. So during LGBT plus History Month, we had a kind of queer movie night each week. But we very specifically searched out movies which were from different cultures, people with different kinds of experiences as much as we could, filmmakers from around the world, especially if they were LGBT themselves. One of our committee members is the biggest film buff I've ever met, who knows every queer film under the sun, no matter how kind of unknown it is, whether it's from some random place from a very small kind of filmmaker. But yeah, if you want film recommendations, then do reach out to us. But like, for example, like sometimes they come from quite unexpected places. So Japan is quite a conservative country on LGBT plus issues, but I found a TV show recently which is about 2 asexual characters, which is the best asexual representation I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, this is the country that's coming out of, they don't even have kind of equal marriage yet. But yeah, just kind of try and seek out representation from maybe places that are a bit less mainstream. I think that's great.
Yeah, amazing. Just following on from that as well, for those who might be looking for support during Pride and kind of all year round, are there any charities or support services that you know of that you'd like to recommend to anyone?
I will start off with a shameless plug because obviously we are a resource. So our link tree has all of our social media links. It's Loughborough LGBTA. We have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Discord, YouTube, and TikTok. We're everywhere. And there's also information on our website. If you go to lsu.co.uk and search for the LGBT Plus Association, you'll be able to find us. I've kind of talked through what we do, but aside from that, on campus, other really great support is Lisa Vine, who runs a trans non-binary drop-in service. So if you're trans non-binary and you don't necessarily feel comfortable coming forward to the LGBT Association, or maybe you need more professional support, she's there, she's brilliant. Also local support that's not university. There's the LGBT Centre in Leicester, which I hear is great. Also, Switchboard is an LGBT plus helpline. If you're looking for support and you're kind of from a religious background, then Hadaya, Inclusive Mosque, Iman, they're all great. Other trans support, Mermaids Gender are fantastic, especially for young people, but they also have I think student chat room as well, which is brilliant. And I also find the LGBT Foundation, who I have spoken on a panel for them once, which is crazy for me, but they have some really awesome resources, especially about kind of allyship, but also for LGBT people as well. I think they're all great resources to turn to.
I can't really add much to that. I think that was fab. You've got all the things that I'd thought about. So I just did it for those who need lower barriers to entry. lgbt@loughborough.ac.uk. It comes to me, and I can help signpost you in a specific direction. So I'll just add that to the list as well.
No, that's great. And where can people find more information about the staff network as well, Chris?
I should probably plug my own network.
You've got to plug your own.
Well, if you search in Google LGBT plus staff network Loughborough University, you'll find a dedicated webpage. Any new starters as well, you should get a notification about different staff groups there are at the university, and we've got 9, maybe nearly 10 coming. And LGBT plus staff network is one of them. So yeah, have a look at the website, got who the committee is. Our terms of reference is a little bit more university focused. Terms of reference, what it's about, what our aims are, and how you can get involved further.
Amazing. That's so great. Thank you both so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we end the podcast episode?
I just would like to invite people to all LGBT plus events that we have. As I said, come along, just listen, and just take it in, and take it in whatever it is about. Whoever's speaking, you'd be more than welcome. And hopefully, whether it's through attending a Pride march or a protest, or whether it's just having a conversation with someone over a water cooler where you somewhat disagree with something that someone's saying, and whether it's gently or more forcefully, verbally, you disagree with them, then hopefully you can be part of LGBT plus representation and help us, as I say, bring better inclusion to more and more people every day.
Yeah, I can't really add anything other than to echo that, really. You're always welcome to join us regardless of whether you're LGBT plus or seeking support, or if you're an ally. And yeah, I'd agree, if anything you can do to be an ally is fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. And Issie, I'm definitely going to take you up on that film list, because I want to see those. That sounds amazing. Thank you both so much for joining us today on Let's Talk Loughborough. It's been great to have you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.